I got a couple of really fun things to go over today with everybody. I'm going to chat a little bit about a few different things that I think are going to be really, really helpful, and excited to share a little bit about something that went really well for us this week as well that I think everybody can implement. And then I've got a question that I want you to ask yourself that I think is going to help out a whole lot in your own studio and your own program development. And I'm going to share that at the end here. So make sure you stick around for that. Give you a little bit of homework. And all I want you to do is just ask yourself a question for that homework today. First thing I wanted to go over was just we hosted an open house at one of our studios this last weekend, and that went really, really well. I don't show up to those open houses. We have our staff well enough trained that they just kind of run those and manage them themselves. And it was about 3.5, 4 hour open house. And they did 21 enrollments that day. Now, open house for us is not old students coming back. This is all brand new students coming in. So about 20 students enrolled, 21 students, I think, at the event itself. 2 more called and enrolled, I think, over the phone. And then we've got a little bit of follow-up work to do with some of the folks that ended up not being able to make it to the open house, but we expect to enroll another probably 5 or 6 people this week off of that one event. So we're coming up close to about 30 enrollments off of about 3.5 hours or 4 hours of work at that open house. Now, for those of you who know kind of how we structure our programs, a couple of the things that I wanted to share about that. Those students that are signing up at those events are making large down payments. They're paying high monthly tuition rates, and they're making a commitment for 12 months of training. So if the average client value from somebody like that is somewhere between $2,800 and $3,000, if you enroll just 20 students in an event like that, I mean, pretty easy to do the math. That's literally, I mean, that's a lot of money, right? That's $60,000 in income for the studio, but it's just, it's probably $6,000 or $8,000 actually collected at the event itself. So great thing to be doing this time of year. Absolutely recommend that you do it. Not just sharing that because I'm trying to brag about it. I am proud of my staff, but something that we did see happen this year was that there were a number of studios that tried to implement their open houses earlier in the year, and it coincided too directly with the back to school time in their area. And that's a mistake. It is hard to get people to come in and do this type of enrollment at an open house when there's all kinds of other stuff going on and demanding their attention. And that's a shift we've seen since COVID, people coming back from COVID. So we need to do even more work. I guess the take home message here is let's disassociate our programs from the school year as best as we can. And that seems to be solving that problem. So for those of you who follow our stuff and follow these systems and do an open house at this time of year, if you did an open house at the same time as the back to school time in your area, let's schedule another quick one. Let's do another one. If you can disassociate your studio programs from the school year, this is a shift we have seen since COVID, and it's making a really big difference for us. We've done it always, like it's not something new for us, but we are not having the same problems that some other folks had that haven't done that disassociating yet. If you need help with that, reach out. Happy to chat with you about what that means or how to do that. But it is something that's working really, really well, and that I'd recommend that you get on the calendar. Okay, so that being said, I wanted to do a little bit of story time with Mago today. Some of you may have heard this story before, but I took a picture the other day. My wife and I dropped my daughter off at a little event she was attending, and then we went and got some ice cream. We went and got some ice cream at an ice cream shop in the city just north of me. The ice cream shop is called Lolly's Ice Cream. Some of you have heard me talk about this ice cream shop before. And what I think is important to understand about this ice cream shop is that it is owned by a couple, and the husband exited a software company in my city a couple of years ago. And when he did that, he made more money than most human beings would be able to spend in a lifetime. And after he exited that company and made all of this money, He and his wife decided that their next business venture was going to be a little ice cream shop. And it's a fun place. It's right next to a really popular bike path, just a couple blocks from a lake that's very popular that folks go to visit, and in the downtown area of this little city that's just north of the one that I live in here. And cute little place, but that's not why I'm sharing the story with you. I'm sharing the story with you because can you imagine being an ice cream shop in that city and having to compete with that guy? Why is it hard to compete with that guy? Well, my fear of being in the same industry and location as him and competing directly with him is that he could simply outspend all of his competitors. He could literally give ice cream away for free for years, run all the other ice cream shops out of business, and then be the only one in business. He's just hard to compete with because he doesn't have to be profitable. And that, of anything, scares me more in the world of competition with other businesses than anything else. Well, why am I sharing that story with you about that ice cream shop? In part, it's because that's the kind of industry that we're in the dance studio, specifically dance studio industry, instructional studio industry. There are a lot of people in this industry, but many of you are probably in areas that are very competitive. You have lots of people competing for the money and the time of the clients that you're trying to get as well. You're probably very competitive. I am as well. I have my closest competitor is less than 3 blocks away from me, right over that way. And many of these people that own these businesses do not have to be profitable. Many of them have a spouse that, for example, has a really good income. And that's the reason that they can afford to start this business, and they don't have to be profitable. Many people have opened this with the intent just to be a little bit recreational with it, just to have a hobby and something to occupy their time. And you're competing against those people. You're competing against people that don't have to be profitable, or that don't want to be profitable, or that don't know how to be profitable. Those people are the hardest people to compete with. So how do we do it? Well, there's a couple of things that we think are important. Of course, number one, if you've been following our stuff for any amount of time, you know that higher level messaging is a really big piece of that. We need to make sure that we're very, very clear on what our unique higher level messaging is, and that we're explicit, not implicit, in communicating that with our communities, with the communities that we're trying to serve. You take just a moment and you go to everybody's website, go check all your competitors' websites, or just pick a random large city in the United States and look at the top 5 websites that come up in a Google search for dance studios in that area. And imagine for a moment that you're a beginner. Imagine for a moment that you don't know what the seasonality of dance studios is. You don't know how they, kind of work and operate, and you're all new to this. Would you be able to distinguish between those studios? They all say the same thing. The messaging on their websites is, of course, all the same thing. But that's not the reason that I'm telling this story and talking about this competitive nature of this industry. I do think that higher level messaging is important. I do think that we need to distinguish ourselves. But even more importantly than that, there's another way that we can be more competitive. And that is having a higher average student value than the other studios in our area. And I know that at first that might seem a little bit counterintuitive. And I'm not going to spend a ton of time talking about why that average student value makes us so competitive, but just for a short little soundbite answer to that question, it's simply because if you have a high average student value, so in other words, if a new student coming into your studio over the next 12 months is going to pay your studio more money than your closest competitor, that is your biggest advantage, competitive advantage. And the reason for that is because you can just simply outspend your competitors. You can afford to make more financial mistakes. We all do that. You can afford to spend more money on marketing and advertising and attracting great staff members. You can afford to build your building out in a nicer facility. You can just simply outspend your competitors. And whoever can afford also to spend the most money to acquire a new student is going to win when push comes to shove. And so let's not downplay the fact that your average student value, your pricing strategy, is one of the most, if not the most competitive edge that you have if you're in a competitive area. Now, the other reason that I'm sharing this is because I want you to ask yourself a question that I think is really, really useful. And that question is, how much could I raise my tuition without negatively impacting my new enrollments by the same amount or more? So in other words, if you were to raise, ask yourself this question, if you were to raise your tuition by 5%, just 5%, if you were to raise your tuition by just 5%, not on the old students you already have an agreement with, let's honor the agreements we've made with them, but the new students, let's say, coming in the door, especially at this time of year, if you were to raise your tuition by 5%, would you enroll 5% fewer students? Most people that I ask that to say no. They think if they raised it by just 5%, they would probably not enroll 5% fewer students. Well, just mathematically, third grade math, that means that's the right decision for your business, right? To raise your tuition by 5%. Well, let's take it another step further. If we were to raise your tuition by 10%, would you decrease the enrollment percentage of people by 10%? Would you enroll 10% fewer students? Well, probably not, but I don't know. And where I'm going with this is how far in your brain, I'm not giving you an assignment to go do this. I'm not giving you the answer to this. How much can I raise my tuition and still end up ahead if I don't enroll as many people? That's not what I'm not giving you the answer to that. I'm asking you where your belief system is. I'm curious where your belief system is right now. How much could you raise your tuition percentage-wise and have it be the right mathematical business decision, because it wouldn't negatively impact the number of students that you enroll so much that it wouldn't be a benefit to your business? I hope that question makes sense. And I really am interested in your responses. I don't think there's a right response or a wrong response, because the question I'm asking is, where is your belief system? Right now, where is your belief system? And that's my homework for you for the next couple of days here. I want you to think about that. I want you to think about, what do I believe? If I raised my tuition by 20%, would I enroll 20%, 25% fewer people than I currently am? If not, that might be the right answer. Now, I'm not telling you to do it. I'm not giving you the assignment. I'm not giving you the answer to what that number is. I'm just asking you to pay attention and be aware to where your belief system is right now. And then pay attention to what that does to the way that you think about your program. Is that motivating to you to realize whatever that answer is, whether your answer is, I can't raise my tuition at all, or I don't believe I can raise it by 5%, or whatever your answer is? Does that motivate you, or does that frustrate you, or where are you at with that? So there's your two-part question. What is that percentage in your belief system? Your belief system is I could raise it 20%. That's it. If I did it any higher, it would be a mistake. But if I did it 20%, that would work. And then how does that make you feel about your program? What does that make you think about your program? I'm curious about your answers. I really am. I hope you'll share those with me. Just to let you know that I put my money where my mouth is at this last open house, where we did reasonably well. We'll get 30 students off of that open house in just 3.5, 4 hours of work. And we raised the tuition on those programs by $20 per month at that open house. It had zero impact, in my opinion, on the number of people that my staff were able to enroll during that little time frame. And going forward now, we have those new tuition rates, those higher tuition rates in those programs. So that's an exciting and motivating thing for me. I feel good about that. Okay. Let me know your answer. Where's your belief system? How much do you believe you could raise your tuition and have it be the right decision? And how does that make you feel right now about your programs? I think there's a lot we can learn from that. Talk to you soon.